Israel isn't hiding its crimes anymore, not in Gaza, not anywhere. It wages open genocide, flattening hospitals, schools, mosques, homes. Over 60,000 people gone. A total siege chokes the strip, and through the ruins, people walk for miles, exhausted, starving, just to reach an aid truck. And when they finally do, they're gunned down. Some return with sacks of flour, others with the blooded corpses of loved ones, shot, shelled as they scrambled for a few grains. But Gaza is just one front. In Lebanon, Israel strikes at will. It bombs homes, crosses borders to assassinate, occupies villages it never left. In Syria, it holds the Golan Heights, pushes deeper south, fires missiles to the edge of Damascus. Borders mean nothing, laws mean less. Israel moves how it wants, kills whom it wants, and now it has turned to Iran. After indirect talks in Oman between Tehran and Washington, Israel launched a sudden, unprovoked war. First came the assassinations, generals, scientists, civilian officials, then the bombs on military bases, power plants, airports, even public infrastructure. The excuse, Iran's nuclear program, peaceful, civilian, fully monitored by the IAEA. The hypocrisy is staggering. Macron raced to Israel's defense, calling Iran a threat to global security. This from the same fronts that helped secretly build Israel's Dimona reactor in the 1950s and 60s, the region's only undeclared nuclear arsenal. No inspections, no accountability. Today, Israel holds 80 to 90 nuclear warheads, maybe more. It has second strike capabilities via submarines and air power. It won't sign the NPT, won't allow inspectors, yet it bombs Iran in the name of non-proliferation. Britain swiftly joined in, sent RAF jets to Cyprus, surveillance aircraft, early warning systems, logistical support, all for Israel. The US escalated, deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford, Aegis destroyers, weapons, real-time satellite coordination. The EU sang the same song. Israel has the right to defend itself, even now, when it is the aggressor, when it is Iran defending its sovereignty. The same refrain used to justify the massacre of tens of thousands in Gaza. The same script, the same lie. International law, human rights, moral outrage, all suspended for Israel. The West arms Israel to the teeth, not for safety, but for supremacy, to keep it the region's only nuclear power, to let it dominate, invade, occupy with impunity. Israel was never just a state, it was a Western outpost, a settler colony built as empire collapsed. Britain withdrew its soldiers from the Middle East, but not its ambitions. The US stepped in, took over, and the goal never changed. Control the land, seize the oil, silence the people. But this time, the playbook is failing. Israel is ruled by fanatics, openly, proudly. A state that once cloaked its violence in diplomacy now flaunts it. Ministers threaten annihilation. Settlers chant for genocide. Soldiers film themselves laughing in the lingerie of the women they've just killed or displaced. In Jerusalem, mobs storm the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They chant, Muhammad is dead, and left girls behind. May your villages burn. There are no schools in Gaza, no kids left. Genocide, mainstreamed. And Netanyahu pompously claims to represent the free world, a grotesque parody of truth as he presides over apartheid, occupation, and mass killing. Across the Arab world, millions watch, disgusted, betrayed, bitter, enraged, sick to the soul. Their leaders normalize with war criminals, their people seethe. The region was paralyzed until now, because this time someone stood up. Iran is not the Gaza Strip. It's not 45 square kilometers of open-air prison. It's not an armed group. It's a sovereign nation of 85 million, spanning 1.65 million square kilometers, missiles, mountains, strategic depth. It has absorbed assassinations, cyber attacks, sanctions, and still it stands. Still it strikes back. For the first time since 1948, Israeli cities are burning. The myth of immunity? Gone. And no, Israel cannot play the victim now, not while holding the nukes, not while it's bombing, invading, erasing. And inside Iran, something deeper has stirred, a memory. 1953, the coup against Mossadegh, planned by the CIA, executed with MI6, all because he dared nationalize his country's oil. Operation Ajax toppled a democratically elected government and reinstated the Shah. What followed? 25 years of brutal repression enforced by the Savak, trained by the West, but the wound goes deeper. 1891, the tobacco revolt, when Britain seized control of Iran's tobacco and Iran said no. Clerics like Ayatollah Shirazi led a national boycott. Even women in royal households joined in, refusing to smoke. The revolt weakened the Qajar dynasty and left a searing truth in Iran's memory: never bow to foreign control. That memory still lives in every chant, every protest, every funeral. Every missile launched today carries a century's weight of betrayal and defiance. And now it's raw again. A clip has gone viral. An Iranian woman, not even wearing the black shadow, not your typical regime supporter, her voice breaks with fury. She denounces the genocide in Gaza, the silence of the West, and the decades of humiliation inflicted on her country. Then she shouts, "We want a nuclear bomb." To Iranians, this is about dignity, sovereignty, saying we will not be broken again. The shift is regional. Pakistan, the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons, has warned the region is boiling. Pakistan may be next. Israel is allied with India, and Islamabad sees what's coming. Turkey is sounding the alarm. Erdogan's ministers declared Netanyahu has placed us in his sights. A few days ago in the Knesset, Netanyahu declared there will be no Ottoman Empire. This is no history lesson. That is a threat. Israel, drunk on power and Western backing, believes it can bomb, starve, and humiliate the Muslim world into submission. But the region is waking up. This isn't just a war, it's a war on dignity, on the very idea that anyone in this region can stand tall. And yet Western media dreams on. The BBC interviews the Shah's son, inquires if Israeli bombs might liberate Iran, as if Iranians want to be saved by the son of a dictator, by a dictator they overthrew, as if freedom comes from toppled monarchs and Western missiles. Israel thought it could do what it's always done: assassinate, bomb, walk away. But now Tel Aviv is burning, Haifa is under fire, Ashkelon is not safe. For the first time, the war is on Israeli soil. The myth of invincibility is broken. Iran can endure. It is fast. It is resilient. It has been preparing for this moment for decades. The dream that Israel could destroy Iran's regime with surgical strikes and walk away unscathed has collapsed. Tel Aviv has lit a fire it cannot contain.
Powerful words. How's it going, everyone?
That is Middle East Eye. It's a news organization called Middle East Eye. So thank you for that, Middle East Eye. And hello, everybody. And Michael, I noticed that when Black Life had her show, like the guest that she had on, we couldn't really hear her very good, and it felt like she was lagging. But everybody else thought it was fine, and I went back and watched it, and all the things that we were experiencing, it didn't relate on the actual.
I noticed that too when I was watching it, because I just rewatched it right away after you guys were done. I didn't really have anything better to do, so yeah, it's just kind of.
Oh, thanks.
No, I mean, like sometimes there's like live shows that you got to pick up while it's live.
Oh, no, it's sorry.
Yeah, I should be a little bit more conscientious and stop putting us down.
So look, happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, happy Juneteenth. And in the spirit of Juneteenth, I wanted to just share this little funny, cute little tidbit real quick. Here we go. I can't see it yet. Shucks. Okay, let me start over. Okay.
I would like to read my message to Iran so that in the time of trouble, you don't get us mixed up. Dear Iran, please leave us out of this. And by us, I mean Black folk. We don't have nothing to do with the United States. Please send us a cyber signal before anything pops off. We are tired too. By tired, I mean real bad. They attack us too. I ran to TikTok to send you this message. Signed, Black folk. I would like to read.
That's I don't know if cute's the right word. That's quaint. I don't know if that's funny. Oh, let's just remove that from the stage. There we go. Oh, that's clever. I think that the Iranians aren't exactly going to always be able to be so precise with their. I mean, they have been very good at this. That's actually like they're very good at not having collateral damage against people. But when something like they have to go up against the United States, because the United States is forcing them into a confrontation, I'm not sure they're going to really be able to. They're going to have to do like economic damage to shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, for example. That's inevitably going to hurt a lot of people economically, like not just like Black people, but that's like the reason why they're refraining from doing that kind of an action is because that's like a collective punishment problem, as opposed to they're not able to target their enemies directly enough with that. So, but I thought it was clever. She made it out to be seem like a hostage type of video.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, it was pretty funny, I thought. Yeah, Iran's been like
I think the 4-minute warning is the cyber signal. Yeah.
Oh, and hi Wesley. So they've been pretty precise, and remember we kind of touched on this before when Iran just showed Israel, hey, you can be touched. We can break your dome. Like we figured it out how to touch you. So you need to chill out.
Yeah.
And they did it with 0 casualties in precision. So
yeah. It's been kind of emotionally hard. How do I say this? Like it's been a bit emotionally confusing time for me to be. I mean, I'm typically advocating against Schadenfreude, as I think many of you viewers will have remembered from previous streams. I don't really think it's the healthiest thing for mental health, and yet, so when we see something like revenge on Israel, long time coming, fuck around, find out kind of thing. A lot of people have been celebrating this, and I can't deny that some part of me is also enjoying the some genuine justice being kind of meted out to the actual perpetrator for once. I just worry that this is the beginning and not the end, and I don't want to get ahead of myself with all kinds of fervor, believing that I understand how this is all going to play out, because it can still go a lot of different ways. It's a very pivotal moment. That's why I kind of.
I mean, Israel's been trying to destabilize the Middle East for quite some time. What were the 7 countries?
Yeah.
Syria, Iraq, Lebanon. Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt,
Libya.
I
think it was Somalia.
Iran.
And
yeah, it's Somalia. You're right. Iran and Somalia. Those 7 countries. So they're like Trump. They told you what they want to do, and they're doing it. So I don't feel so bad for them.
No, yeah. I mean, the only people I feel bad for, I think people kind of forget that they're like the little newborn babies in Israel are not guilty. Like people want to try and say like the whole population of Israel is guilty. The adults are, and the kids are being brainwashed, and that makes it a whole philosophical dilemma of like question of when does a child become guilty? Because let's just not forget that. But I don't want to be sounding pro-Zionist here. I'm just trying to say from a like as an impartial perspective as possible. Like if you make the argument that Palestinian children are innocent, I think it's only fair to say that children are innocent, and they're not the target of the Iranians. I think this is also something that we will see as things unfold. The death toll, from what I seen, was it's probably changed already by now, but the last I heard it was like 250 to 20, like 25 kind of thing. 250
Yeah.
for Iranians, 25 for Israelis. It's probably out of date by a few days already, but the ratio is typically going to stay in that range, partially because it's an interesting thing to point out strategically, like because Iran is so much bigger, they have a much bigger population too. That means that Israel has a much bigger population of targets to shoot at.
I think it's like 85 million, somewhere between
Right.
85 to 95 million, something like
Yeah,
that.
and Israel only has 8 million. But on the flip side of that, when you're talking about like strategic, like buildings and defensive positions and stuff, Iran only has a much smaller roster of targets that they need to take out to cripple the country. So it's kind of, and not to mention, obviously, Israel is much more bloodthirsty and criminal and willing to, like genocidal is a word really, that, and they're willing to try and target civilians to pressure the Iranian government to surrender or for the people to do regime change. And the Iranian perspective is a much more show the people of Israel that they are more morally righteous by not killing them, and hope that one day they actually maybe wake up to their sins. I'm thinking that's my interpretation of the Iranian supreme leadership faith in their Muslim ways, right? I don't have that much insight into their society on that angle, but I would not dismiss their religiosity as being authentic of many of these 85 million people.
I'm sure Rondo will chime in on that one.
Yeah. And I think that what's been positioned over this time is there's been a grand debate about, I think it's called Umayya or Ummah, the unity of Muslim people in these troubled times that we're in, and to resolve the Palestinian issue, but also things like Muslims in India and stuff, and in Pakistan. So if the way that the geopolitics play out, Iran manages to position itself as the ideal candidate to rally around for the Muslim world to actually effectively attain this ummah, that would be significant for Islamic politics. And if another country like Saudi Arabia were to be able to be that center of power and influence, that would be a much different development, culturally, socially, politically. So it's interesting to see if the Muslim community will be able to come together in a way that's unprecedented, because there has been a lot of division about which side to back. I don't want to get too much on this because it's not my area of expertise. I just find it interesting to observe as like a non-religious person, how the different factions in religious groups manage to overcome their collective regional problems or contribute to their own undermining their own success. So
We have a new person in the chat. Mother, I'm hungry. Mother, I'm hungry. Welcome. Good to see you here. Mastermind, I saw they're kind of talking about a bunch of different things in the chat. So Jacqueline brought up Doge, and Mastermind was just saying that this is one of the many evil things Doge was trying to do, but to kill the EPA so Elon could keep his gas-powered server farm in Tennessee. They're already having problems with that farm. It's
Yeah.
already causing environmental breakdown.
Doge was to kill a
In
lot of things, but yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I forget the man's name. That he's a representative from Tennessee. I just recently saw him being interviewed, and he was talking about all the environmental problems it was causing in, of course, marginalized neighborhoods. So it's quite unfortunate.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's very. It's tragic to keep hearing this repeated story in communities all over the United States, and Canada's got our fair share of stories like that. But it seems like um, I don't know if we want to get into talking about who's got better environmental regulations, but we definitely have. Uh, like the Liberal Party pretends to be more about saving the environment, but then they're supporting all this. They just recently committed to increase, like meeting their NATO 2% target spending. They're back all the wars to the hilt. How are you going to really solve climate change? So
yeah, this is a little off the subject too.
yeah,
But
that's
I
okay.
just watched this documentary because you mentioned Canada. So, gosh, what's that mayor's name? The crackhead
Uh,
in Canada, Bob
uh,
Ford. Bob
his crackhead
Ford.
was his brother. It's
Bob
Doug
Ford.
Ford. Doug
Bud
Ford
Ford.
is the
Rob Ford.
premier of Ontario. That's my premier. Yeah, conservative
What
premier.
what was his name?
Doug Ford.
Doug Ford.
His
Okay.
brother was Rob Ford. His brother was the crack addict. Yeah, but it goes to show you that
But
we've got, and I think if I don't know if I covered on this show or whatever, but Doug Ford was the crack dealer when he was younger, and his brother was the
oh,
addict. But
but it seems like people really, really, really liked him, and he was doing really good things for people. That's what it seemed like from the documentary. I don't know. We had a crackhead too, a crackhead mayor too, and the people loved him. His name was
yeah, I wonder why.
Marion Barrett.
Yeah.
I know somebody knows in the chat. Yes, thank you, Mastermind. Marion Barry.
I'm sure it's
He
more
was, he was
common
beloved.
than people know. If we weren't so focused on if we were more focused on the local politics, we might dig up a little. Like alcoholic politicians
I,
are like a dime a dozen for sure, but
I'll take a crackhead over a meth head any day.
yeah, I think I agree on
Any
that.
day.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Crackhead
There is a bit of
are fun.
there's a stair step of I'll take a meth head over a fetty head any day, and a crackhead over a meth head, and a pothead over a crackhead.
It's a hierarchy.
This is a hierarchy of discrimination, actually, and ableism potentially. Just to point that out, while also trying to be realistic about like there's a hierarchy of impairment that goes along and fatality that goes with these drugs. So much harder to like. There's no rallying from a revolutionary perspective. There's no working with people at the with Fetty and the meth heads, right? So yeah, and the crackheads really, but yeah. And some would say
Yeah.
with the potheads and the alcoholics can't work with us either. Sorry, I'm sorry. That's my limitation. So
Yeah, the war on drugs was people were getting a little too the black community was making too much progress too fast, and the hippies did not like war. Well, neither did the black community, but the hippies were joining forces with the black community about the war and everything, and they said, "Oh hell no!" So the war on drugs killed two birds with one stone.
yeah,
But
well,
ours was a different stone. It was very terrifying and destabilizing for the black community, unfortunately.
I feel
But
like as
that
long
was
as
that was
America
the
exists,
goal.
the war on drugs will never end. That's like a permanent cash cow for them because they are the source of the drugs and the hammer crashing down on that same source. So
So is Rondo breaking news here? Another one of Elon's space penises blew up on the launch pad somewhere in Texas. I did not know that.
Well, that's a welcome breaking news. I appreciate that. It's not it's a perfect kind of news because it's like no more needs to be reported other than more money up in smoke, given away to this pool. What more do
Right.
you want to see? But yeah,
That is quite unfortunate.
you want to start with some
Oh,
content?
I'm sure to share. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, cool.
So, Professor Morandi,
Yeah, I was watching
he's
this.
on.
I was laughing. This was hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. So let's just let it speak for itself then, and I'll meet you on the other side.
Okay.
Or raise your hand if you want me to pause or anything.
Professor Morandi, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Did Iran majorly miscalculate? Because even now, President Trump is providing Iran with an off-ramp, telling them to come to the negotiating table. At what point will Iran take that offer?
Well, according to your narrative, Iran always miscalculates. It's a regime. I heard the regime 20 times in the last 10 minutes as I was listening. You sound like TASS news agency upgraded during the Soviet Union. And you say the regime is unpopular and is killing its people. When General Soleimani was murdered by the same Trump that you talk about, millions of people came to the streets of this city, Tehran, that I'm in. So how is it that he's so unpopular? This propaganda that you're producing is only justifying aggression. What the Israeli regime did was aggression. What it did was unjustified aggression. And Netanyahu has been saying for over 30 years, some say up to 40 years, he's been saying that Iran's on the verge of creating a nuclear weapon. And thanks to people like you, he gets away with these lies. But people can go online and check how many times he said.
Professor Morandi, if you could just focus on, I know your narrative and I know the line you take, and we've spoken a number of times, and I'm sure, but if you could just focus on answering the question, in terms of the nuclear talks, on day 60, as far as we know, Donald Trump had said Iran has 60 days. Israel attacked on the 61st day. Can we talk a little bit about the regime's competence levels, the intelligence and security, the competence of your intelligence and security agencies, the fact that Mossad was able to build drone sites in your country, the fact that the leadership was asleep in their beds when they were struck and that you ignored these warnings. Can we talk a little bit about the fact that the regime was taken completely by surprise and top leaders have now been decapitated and killed as a result of the Israeli attack?
Saying regime, I think it helps you contain your contempt for independent countries. You after all, you work for Sky News. It's understandable. But the regime, how do you know that the Israeli regime had bases inside Iran? You're just repeating their propaganda. Of course, Israel for you is not a regime, sorry, it's a state. But it's a genocidal state carrying out extermination in Gaza, but that's not really important. But how do you know that they have
that
bases
the top
inside
commanders
Iran?
are being killed? Are you denying that top commanders were killed?
Oh, so you mean what you're referring to basically is an attack, an act of aggression, that they suddenly fire missiles at civilian targets at apartment buildings and slaughter people in those apartment buildings, slaughtering whole families. For you, that's targeting. That's a really sophisticated act.
But if I can just ask,
excuse me.
Have military facilities been hit? Have nuclear facilities been hit?
One of the buildings that had some of these commanders, one or two of these commanders, was a large apartment building where they killed everyone, 60 people, 20 children. That's not important for people like you. That's important for people like us. For you, people like you who support ethno-supremacism, and the chosen people being able to slaughter and exterminate
Professor
Palestinians.
Morandi, I'm just trying to get the perspective. We're trying to give you airtime so that you can give us the Iranian perspective on this. And we want to know, and I want to understand, Iran's position here. Will you come to the negotiating table now? Donald Trump, after these series of airstrikes and this attack was launched, called on Iran to come back to the negotiating table. As the spokesperson of the regime, or as someone who worked closely with the negotiating team, do you believe they will come to the negotiating table now?
Well, your regime should know, and your news agency or your TV channel should know better. We were at the negotiating table. It was Trump that conspired with Netanyahu to attack Iran. This is how you twist the truth. You shouldn't invite.
Yeah, sorry, we should have. He's just being straight up truthful, and they just can't handle it. Like I can't stand watching them say stuff like I just want to understand the Iranian perspective, because that's the last thing that they actually want to do. If they actually did that, they would actually have to change their thinking and behavior and speech on air when they talk about this shit. So they can never understand this stuff. But as long as they say it with a straight face, some people will believe it, especially those positive-minded people who like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So
blissful ignorance.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Rondo says he's giving you the Iranian perspective right now, you stupid bat. Okay, that's a UK thing. Stupid bat. I've never heard it before. I thought he just wanted to say stupid bitch, but I guess that's a thing. Stupid bat.
No, some of the UK sayings are still around over here. Just not as many people use them anymore.
All right, so I'm gonna go back a little bit and let her finish tearing this woman a new a-hole.
Because it's always a shame to interrupt.
To attack you.
Yes. Okay, wait, a little bit more. All right.
That conspired with Netanyahu to attack Iran. This is how you twist the truth. You shouldn't invite me because you're easily exposed. Iran was negotiating. Initially, Trump had one position, and so did Witkoff. And then they flipped and said no enrichment. And then they continued the negotiations. And the night before the attack, Trump said that we don't want war. And then after the attack, he said, we're all for it. And you're saying Iran? Is Iran going to come back to the negotiating table? The audacity. Come on, be a bit, show at least a bit of integrity. A bit of integrity will help.
Okay, Professor Morandi, thanks again for joining us here.
Thanks. Okay. I love how they have to thank him for just like mopping the floor with them. Or whatever. Yeah. That's a nice little it's a small little poetic justice on top of all this bullshit. So.
The audacity. I would have said the caucasity.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's just, I mean, they're just being exposed all over the global south and the west. It's not looking good for them. Not at all. They have really lost control of the narrative.
Yeah. This is where I can be a little too cautiously pessimistic, where the signs are pointing to the fact that they seem to have really gotten them into something that they can't get out of. And I hope that that's true, but I don't want to jump to conclusions. It's pretty early. So it's like Ukraine. They're counting on U.S., Big Daddy U.S. to come to the rescue. And it's all about whether that happens or not. And so it's kind of important to understand what's happening. We get a little bit tunnel vision focusing on the conflicts. That's why I wanted to try and look at some of the regional players around Iran and Israel and sort of what are they doing right now is crucial, and what is the U.S. trying to get them to do. But I wanted to get to that. I kind of wanted you to do your stuff first, and I can maybe.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on in here. Maybe I have some fruit or something that I don't know. like a few fruit flies I've seen while we've been on here.
Yeah, I got
Can't
crazy
stand
flies.
that. Anyway, in celebration of Juneteenth, I would say that Israel wrote a check that his ass can't cash. That's what
Israel,
you say a
sorry,
lot in the black community. You wrote a check that your ass can't cash.
wrote
You
a
never
check
heard
that
that
your ass
before?
can't catch. No, that's a good one. Sorry, there's just somebody who's
Cash.
making a noise that just happened to distract me while you're saying that. But yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah,
Okay,
Bella's starting
so
to bark a little bit.
Bella.
Go on, good girl.
Okay, so here's a clip of my 3 least favorite people: Candace Owens, Ted Cruz, I can't remember, Rafael Cruz, and Tucker Carlson. Now, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens.
I can.
But-
I think it's all part of the plan, right? Same thing with Piers Morgan. I can't believe what
Yeah,
strange times we're
believe-
living in. It's like the left and the right aren't that different after all. Maybe I'm more right than I think I am, or whatever, but yeah.
Right. Well, this is taking it back to. This is why you have to separate church from state. This was really, I don't even know how to describe it. Despicable might be the word. Let's see. Uh-oh. Okay, got volume. Let's go.
Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants
God's
of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is.
And I'm really happy he said that, because when you hear it, you realize how ridiculous it sounds. Even if you're not following the theology, if you don't identify as a Christian, you realize that you have a senator that is sitting across saying that his number one reason, he didn't say one of the reasons, he said my number one reason that I support Israel is because the Bible commands me to do so. And just so you know, the Bible does not command, and this is what Tucker Carlson is getting to in that clip, it absolutely does not command you to support the modern state of Israel. Like Genesis is pointing to the modern 1948 created state of Israel, and you must support it, despite the fact that it is very much involved in what can only be described as demonic behavior since its creation, right? And so you're going to ignore every other biblical passage. You're going to misinterpret this one. It's a dispensationalist heresy. Which was factually funded by the World Zionist Congress. And we can do another episode on that as I present to you guys all of the evidence that what it guided the notations. This really stems from the Schofield Bible, the heresy of the Schofield Bible. Schofield himself was an absolute fraud who got funded and was overseas and alleges that he wrote all of these notes in the Bible and is telling people how to read their Bibles. The first time that notations were put underneath the passages. So this is what Genesis says, and this is what it means. And this is how this heresy arrived in America. Then somehow this guy is able to becomes the most printed book, and Oxford Press gets behind it because, like a random pastor, you get the idea here. It was very much a funded effort to have Christians misunderstand the Bible. And Ted Cruz is one of these Christians.
What was your question, man?
I don't know if they're misunderstanding it or they're doing it on purpose, because most people don't.
Well,
most Christians don't know their Bible.
Yeah, see, I don't really know the Bible like anymore. It was read to me over and over again when we went to church once a week, like for years. So I've heard it. I've read some of it while we were there as a kid. I wasn't really terribly inspired by it, and I think there's plenty of people who are, the indoctrination isn't so effective just for whatever reason, right? But
Yeah, Israel's a people, not a place.
yeah,
It's a people, not a place.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with a person
They
who
named it that on
when they're
purpose.
young. Yeah, so but what that clip made me think of, oh hey, Bad Cookies, how's it going?
Hey, Bad Cookies, and I totally agree. It's like she didn't get a, she thought she was gonna get a cabinet position, and when she didn't, now she's like trying to get favor back with regular people by saying the stuff that she already knew. Tucker Carlson, same way. That's why I can't stand them. I just can't stand them. But that was a good interview. If you haven't seen it, Tucker Carlson with Rafael Cruz. Because
I just find the timing.
He was like pressing him, and like he was asking him how many people are in Iran. He didn't know. Wait, don't you think that's something you should know if you're trying to like go to war with the whole country? You need to know like what you're up against, don't you think?
Yeah, I've seen that, but that can be a bit of just like a cynical debate tactic to kind of set the tone, and then get them on the ropes, and then the audience kind of like there's the court of public opinion. So it's not really so much about who's actually arguing better. It's just about who does the audience really want to like see win the argument. And to me, I feel like the whole thing is a setup. I'm saying it's a little suspicious, the timing right now, where everybody knows how popular, or like the government knows how popular Tucker is. We don't consider him to be as independent as he makes him out to be, right? He's gone to colonize independent media and put up a sham of independence, right? And journalistic integrity.
Yeah.
So people, what they've set up here is a punching bag in Ted Cruz. Everybody, they knew full well that everybody's furious with Israel, and the MAGA, they're losing their support of MAGA for betraying them, which they should lose their support. And so they're throwing MAGA a bone, I'm guessing, with this, trying to show that there is people in the MAGA movement who have some integrity on the Israel problem, right? But then Tucker is a wolf in sheep's clothing that you don't want to be getting your advice on about this conflict and any conflict. So.
We kind of talked about that, how all these people were getting fired, and we're like, oh yeah, they're trying to set up the propaganda machine in the independent media space without you knowing that they're really not independent media. So that is a really good perspective that you had there. Speaking of throwing MAGA a bone, I have one more with Candace. We were told no wars. That's what Trump told us. No wars.
And you were gullible enough to believe it. You thought you were gonna pull him to the right or something. I mean, we usually say we're gonna pull them to the left. We'll support Bernie Sanders and we'll get some concessions from him. What are you trying what are you guys trying to get on the right from Trump or whatever? Or libertarians, I guess they're trying to maintain some of their centrist position, I would have to say. So pull them to the left, right? Ironically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, shucks. I don't know why I keep muting on purpose. Here we go.
By the way, if we're taking a look at him, he had been extremely vocal in the past for years, by the way, before he even ran for president, about the disaster of our foreign policy in the Middle East. He specifically called out Barack Obama back in 2011 for what he deems to be an unnecessarily looming conflict with, well, you guessed it, Iran. Take a listen.
Our president president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran.
Okay. And he kept up that 4 years later, that same rhetoric during the 2015 Republican presidential election debate.
The war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. All right. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. But I want to tell you, they lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
And I'm not kidding when I say that this was 8 weeks ago, you guys. Take a listen.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
And Trump has this to say about Tulsi Gabbard, who is his director of national intelligence. You can just dismiss what she says, according to Trump. Take a listen.
Mr. President, you've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having.
What is that, guys? You don't care what your director of national intelligence is telling you? You don't care? Because Bibi Netanyahu, called you up and said, yeah, we need a pretext for war. Like we always need a pretext for. We're constantly bombing and killing people all the time. We're committing a Holocaust in Gaza. Could you just go out there and tell them they had they were building a nuclear bomb? They weren't. And there's been no evidence of that outside of Bibi Netanyahu's trust me, bro. Because I guess you have to come up with something to make people hysterical to believe that we have this never-ending right to murder human beings. That's what it is. It's a carte blanche that has been handed to Israel to continually murder human beings in the Middle East, to use American soldiers to effect regime changes in the Middle East at the benefit of no one but Israel. Okay?
Right, this guy right here is a freaking American hero. Why? Because he stands his ground.
Sorry, audio is a little bit strange for me, but
Okay.
Go ahead.
But meanwhile, Israel has nuclear weapons.
There's too much hypocrisy now. Yeah.
Yeah, the hypocrisy, and they're not monitored. That's the craziest part of it all.
Kill people at will.
Yeah.
Because America
that is the craziest part of it all.
Yep. They got the big guardian in there.
So Wesley, I would say like Tulsa is nothing more. They do this every time. Like Obama picked Biden as a nudge to white people that he wasn't going to go all black on you. You know, Trump picked, what was his name?
J.D. Vance. Oh,
no.
Vance.
Yeah. The fly.
Religion.
Fly guy. As a nod to evangelicals, that it's okay to vote for me. I mean, that's what they do. So that is a really good point, Wesley, about the purpose of picking Tulsi Gabbard, to give an illusion that they are actually a no war. It's going to be a no war administration. So it's okay. You could vote for us.
Well, I think this is a bit of an opportunity for me to mention Blue Moon Red Wine. Hey, go on. Lucy with Blue Moon Red Wine.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of work that she seems to be like the only one. Hey, stop it. There's people in the hallway. So she's always getting worked up about them. But so Tulsi Gabbard, Lucy Blue Moon Red Wine has done a couple shows talking about Tulsi Gabbard's connection with the Hindutva fascists. So it's kind of fortuitous that you shared this clip, or that she's in the media again, because people are, because of her position. I forget what her position is. She's like an intelligence kind of chief or whatever.
Director of
intelligence.
Just that quick.
So I think he's got connections with the Hindutva people, but then what's happening with India is there seems to be a little bit of a falling out with the Trump administration because of the Trump administration's got strong relationships with the Pakistan military, and has been heavily playing both sides on that one. And so this is just, we're getting to one of those historical inflection points where there's only so much more that you can play both sides before you're like that game is up and people have to pick a side. And that's kind of what the World War III thing is about, right? So
Director of National Intelligence. Okay. Rondo. Yes. He is definitely in the closet. My pants.
You got golden closet.
How did you know what we were talking about?
A golden closet.
Hi, and I can't speak. Antediluvian atheist. Hello. Good to see you.
Yes. Hey. Good. What's up? Hey, antediluvian atheist.
And Jacqueline, yeah, I miss Yanina as well. Hopefully we'll see her. I just have one more, and then I'm gonna pass it to you because I'm really interested to hear what you just give us a little teaser.
Okay.
Because Lance is coming.
Yeah. I was wanting to kind of answer this question. This is actually part of what I'm gonna kind of cover.
Okay, so that's the
I don't want
teaser.
to give it away, but yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just gonna play one more from another grifter who's seen the light, Piers Morgan. Okay, here we go.
That interview, like, as much as I understand that this is a distraction, I must say that they've done their research well, because this is like golden television kind of thing for talk shows. Like this was, or if that's what you're showing, I don't know if this is something else or whatever. But the George Galloway, if you haven't seen it, watch the George Galloway Piers Morgan interaction. Or Hard Lens Media covered it, talking about how it devolves into whose dick is bigger, mine or yours kind of thing. Typical Piers Morgan shit.
I have another one too. I forgot, which is, I forget his name. He's a professor at Columbia University. I really like watching him, and his name is escaping me right now. But we can go to this one first, and then, okay.
Would Israel be targeting Palestinian civilians when it has been seeking from the get-go to evacuate them, to provide humanitarian corridors, which it has defended, even though Hamas has fired onto these civilians as they seek to flee areas where Hamas has embedded its terror infrastructure in these civilian areas, in mosques, schools, hospitals, and every second house when I was in Rafah that we saw. That is truly.
How many houses did you see?
That is the truly.
How many houses did you see?
Well, many of them were destroyed,
how many
unfortunately.
Did you see? You said every second house. You saw
yes.
10 houses.
No, tens, plural.
10. Well, how many?
The matter
well, hang on, how many?
But Hamas
you said every
clear.
second house.
Yes.
So how many did you see?
No, every second house.
How many houses did you go into?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Because
You've made a statement. You said every second house. How many did you go into?
The houses were
Give
no
me a
longer
number.
left there.
You know how many houses you went into.
Tens.
What? 10, 15, 20?
Who cares? You're missing the point here. I'm afraid.
No, I know the point.
The point is that
You've
Hamas,
made a claim.
Hamas
I'm simply
makes
asking you to give me a number. Numbers are not your strong point. I know that.
I beg your pardon?
But I imagine you remember how many houses you went into.
No, we saw destroyed houses in the Rafah area because Hamas has been using these houses as part of its terror infrastructure.
How do you know?
Because they make clear
You just
their
said you went
tactics.
into them and you.
No, I
you said,
never.
you said,
Again, you're putting words in my mouth. If you would listen, I think things would be a lot clearer.
Right.
Hamas have
So
made
you
it
know
clear.
what was inside houses, even though you didn't go inside them, and they were all obliterated.
Well, you know I couldn't go inside them because they were booby-trapped by
So
Hamas.
you didn't go
But what I
inside them,
did
and they were all
see-
destroyed.
What I did
but you
see-
knew they were all full of Hamas stuff.
What I did see
How?
was drone footage that goes into,
drone footage.
that
Okay.
went into these houses that
So
demonstrated.
you didn't go into the houses. You didn't see any Hamas stuff in there, but you saw drone footage
that
later.
demonstrated
Why do you
how
know the
Hamas,
idea?
well, look,
All right,
Hamas make it very clear.
You know
If
what, I'm
won't
sorry,
take
it's
my
just all
word for it,
flannel, isn't it?
You always take Hamas's word for it. So listen to what they say.
You wouldn't take your
When
word for
they-
it. It sounds like a lot of
So-
old bullshit again.
Well,
Hey.
listen,
It's all bullshit.
Here's, as I've dealt with this argument with Douglas Murray and now here today, this is about as serious as Dennis Rodman claiming that Kim Jong-un showed him a supermarket full of food. You know, I mean, I don't know what to say here. And it would be equally ridiculous if I went on some Hamas-sponsored tour and then came back telling you that everything they say is correct. Here's the bottom line. I have a much more clear logical answer. The reason why two former Israeli prime ministers, including Omar, who is a right-winger, who was Sharon's guy. This is not as if this is some left-wing anti-war peacenik or something like that. The reason why two former Israeli prime ministers have come out and said that Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza is because Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza. The reason why Israel will not let journalists into Gaza is because Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza. And the reason why Israel is killing Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and the reason why they're building up more settlements in the West Bank is because, as Smotrich has said, as Katz, the defense minister, has said this week, and as Benjamin Netanyahu has said for years and years and years, their plan is greater Israel. They want Gaza and the West Bank. They call it Judea and Samaria. They believe that it's rightfully Israel's. Benjamin Netanyahu showed up to the United Nations a couple weeks before October 7th with a map where it was all Israel. That's the bottom line. It's why they've been controlling these territories since 1967. See, the truth makes a lot more sense. And by the way, you know that Israel has nuclear weapons, but you won't say it on this program because you're not in the business of telling the truth about this conflict. You're in the business of defending Israel, which is fine. That's what you want to do. But all three of us know they have nuclear weapons. Maybe we should get into where does international law stand on the US and the UK being partners with a country who's not in the non-proliferation treaty, who has nuclear weapons. Maybe we could have a whole conversation on that next time, Piers.
I think you know what?
We all know what the truth is here.
I've actually asked Netanyahu myself that very question, and he didn't answer. So yeah, I think it'd be a very interesting topic for debate.
That's it.
Yeah, cool. That's a good kind of segue into one of the things that I just wanted to maybe bring up.
And I was showing everybody as we were talking the patch on the Israeli soldier's arm of Greater Israel. So yeah, look how well.
It wasn't that lady was actually, from what I remember, she was like an Israeli lawyer, one of the people trying to defend Israel at The Hague, if I'm not mistaken. I could be, but this is like very kind of on the follow up from what I was talking about on the stream last week. I think it's important to keep a big focus on the legitimacy of international law and the way that it's been delegitimized and who is doing it. So I'm just trying to find this.
So while you're looking for that, okay, so that was really funny, Bad Cookies. She's the Jewish Jean-Pierre. So that lady, because we've been talking about how all these people are finally seeing the light, right? She just wrote a book. She's like going around the country peddling this book called Independent. So like she's finally seeing the light. She lied to us as press secretary over and over and over and over again. And now that she's not in the administration anymore, she has to find a new way to make her money, and she's peddling this book called Independent. It's really quite funny.
But people keep wanting to go to international law as the recourse for what's happening here, and I think I'm on the side where we have to be critical as far as how much time we devote to continuing to give the UN a chance as a legitimate institution. I think it's important to remember the League of Nations preceded the United Nations and collapsed, and the United Nations is a successor organization. So why is there's no political will whatsoever to replace the UN with a better institution that actually accomplishes this? And how would you do that? You would have to address the distortion of colonialism and imperialism that has poisoned the development of international law since its inception. So last week I was doing I didn't really do an effective job about trying to reveal like the Zionist influence on the birth of The Hague as the seat of international arbitration. But there is kind of I think that this is a good trail to keep rabbit hole to keep digging at, as long as I can kind of get through the censorship to be able to find actual good sources. Problem is I don't really have enough money. I mean, this would probably be a good time to ask for donations and crap, but this article is actually available, so people can look it up. But a lot of articles I can't access because they are behind a paywall. So I appreciate this one. This one's from London Review of International Law. I'm not really too fond of like Oxford and all that, but I don't really know too much. Anyway, I digress. I found that this is relevant because this is exactly what they're trying to do with the narratives about Israel has a right to defend itself, like it's the internet. They had like Israel had poisoned the ICJ case against them by having one of the judges kind of try and argue Israel's narrative and stuff. So that's kind of why that prosecution at the UN fizzled out. And the way that they get away with it is this good versus evil debate. So the genocide could possibly be justified if you're not talking about the legality of it, but the morality of it, and you try and frame it in a good versus evil narrative. And then as long as the hero needs to do all kinds of extreme violence in order to achieve justice, I mean, you can actually see this narrative reflected in. It's important for communists to understand if we're trying to be caught up by this same phenomenon too, and that's what's undermining us, because while in our minds we see us as the good guys and Israel as the bad guys, when we're trapped in a binary fallacy of a Manichaean mindset, we see ourselves as the heroes, and we see ourselves as justified as violating whatever kind of laws in order to vanquish the enemy and do whatever needs to be done. And very quickly, we've gone down the slippery slope of evil in the name of good. And if we want to, at least from an optics perspective, we want to avoid thinking or engaging in Manichaean narratives. But I'm just going to read this little couple opening lines on this, and then because I wanted to talk more about Pakistan and Iran, I don't want to read this whole thing, but if anybody else wants to read it, I can drop the link in the chat, and the title is International Law as Shibboleth: The Continued Appeal of Heroic Narratives in Support of Military Intervention. Political debates on the use of force draw on Manichaean narratives which are legitimated by legalistic language. Over-reliance on such narratives devalues international law as a safeguard against the illegal use of force, silences criticism that militarism is not the solution to international crises, and blurs legal and non-legal justifications for intervention. Success of Manichaean narratives in support of military intervention relies on their co-optation of the language of international law to present military intervention as a legitimate response to conflict and humanitarian crisis. Focusing on the UK Parliament, this article considers recent scholarly claims that increasing mindfulness of international law in domestic legislatures stems from a determination to learn lessons from Iraq and ensure that future military interventions comply with international law. Very much deeply, badly, horribly, irrevocably exposed as complete horse shit with everything that's happening if you're just paying attention. So I argue to the contrary that there has not been renewed respect for the jus ad bellum in UK parliamentary debate. Rather, there has been an increasing reliance on legalistic language to present intervention as complying with international law. And I appreciate that this is about the UK, but you can substitute the US, Canada, any of the Western NATO countries, and plenty of friendly countries to NATO that are not a part of NATO, like Ukraine and Israel, okay, have not, there has not been a renewed respect for parliamentary debate. We want to look at what the fuck's going on in the parliament of Israel. Enjoy. It's the craziest shit I've ever seen. Rather, there has been an increasing reliance on, legalistic language to present intervention as complying with international law. Paradoxically, this approach has served compliance less than it has reified Manichaean tropes supporting extra-legal approaches to the use of force. This approach has also tended to blur the distinction between legal and non-legal justifications for intervention. This incurs the danger that purely moral and political arguments drive interventions, albeit under the cover of legal process and language. And this is really important here because I find there's some ironic legal evolutions taking place, because I kind of hammer against legal positivism, and this is where I'm kind of learning the dangers of natural law theory as well, because natural law theory is more the argument that morality should be the driving force behind what constitutes law and not law. So Israel is cynically employing like moral and political arguments to justify genocide as opposed to legal arguments. And so it is one of the interesting differences, at least strategically, between, and I'm sure you can look for the ways that Israel uses legal positivism too, right? But I'm seeing that the Nazis used legal positivism to justify their genocide, and Israel's using moral and political arguments, Manichaean narratives to justify it too. So this is a dilemma, I think, that like a legal crisis that the legal field has to resolve, because when they try and say a law is a law, you have to follow it. If you break it, whatever, like we have the right to punish you and use coercion to enforce the law against you. Okay, so when it comes to actually holding anyone accountable, the law has to have a technical side that's respected and stuff, or else it's just kind of ad hoc, whatever we decide, whatever we want. But if it's overly technical, divorced from morality, you can have a genocide get legalized, and people say it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. The law is a law. So it's really important for people to understand that legal positivism is very problematic, but so is natural law theory, and we have to find a way to sublate this problem, to not try and advance the thesis or the antithesis, one or the other, or whatever, but to figure out how to overcome limitations of both of these theories, because the inability to process an ethical, like legal response to these issues leaves us completely vulnerable to these hostile, terrible, criminal actors abusing state power to commit the most heinous crimes, and international law is completely incapable of resolving the issue. I was looking really into this today. It's about sovereignty. Everyone's fucking in love with sovereignty and nationalism, right? But these problems are inherently contradictory and problematic to their core, whatever. Like a good way to put it, I was talking with the AI or whatever, because like DeepSeek, I finally was managed to use DeepSeek again instead of the fucking Microsoft one. But I think it's fitting for me, with my symbol of the Ouroboros, that I asked the question just to see what DeepSeek had to say, and I thought it was fucking perfect, right? So I'm just gonna quickly say this, whatever. I saved what its response was, and this is what it said. It said, I asked, the Ouroboros is a fitting symbol for the representation of the core contradiction of the problematic concept of sovereignty. And then DeepSeek says that the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent devouring its own tail, serves as a potent metaphor for the paradoxical nature of sovereignty, particularly as theorized in modern political philosophy. At its core, sovereignty claims to be indivisible, absolute foundation of political order, yet it simultaneously undermines itself through the very logic of its own assertion. This contradiction mirrors the Ouroboros' cyclical self-destruction and self-creation, revealing sovereignty as a fundamentally problematic concept. Now, of course, there's more to it I could go on, but I digress, and people don't really care about what the AI has to say. It's not reliable right now. I'm just saying, like, it kind of tells you whatever you want to hear. So I'll give you a moment to kind of have a comment there, because I've been kind of droning on for a bit now. So
I was just about to look something up for the people in the comments, but a little fun fact here, like sovereignty, it just makes me think of states' rights, right?
Right.
It's all bullshit. And just a fun fact about the UN, I'm gonna go back to 2003, when they voted on the right to have food, the right for every human being to be fed. Well, the United States was the only country to vote no, and Fiji and Israel were absent. Well, they voted on this again in 2021. The only two countries to vote no were, you guessed it, the United States and Israel.
yeah, and because they object to the whole world being fed, the world doesn't get fed. That's a fundamentally broken system, and anyone who thinks that we're going to fix it, I got a bridge to sell you in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
So, yeah, exactly. And all this made me think of whatever happened with we need to research that, when South Africa took Israel to the international courts. Like, nothing ever really came of it. So
Everything is a big show, and everyone comes away thinking that they got something great. And I'm sorry to be the cynical, pessimistic person every time, but when you look into it, you always find problems, and people would rather just, it's a beauty bias, where they would just rather believe the prettier narrative, you know? But
So I'll put this in the chat. It's from change.org, and let me just refer back to why I'm putting this up there. Oh, Black Life is here. She says, hi, folks. Okay, Jacqueline says the trouble with international law is that it is written to benefit the richest and most powerful countries most of the time. And Mastermind Hours says, Jacqueline, it's hardly international law if the United States always has veto power. Very good.
It's not just the United States, right? But they definitely, the United States is the one who makes the system
They're the
unworkable
ones,
by
right?
far, and Israel than anyone else. But when it comes to stuff like nuclear weapons, I was just looking up to improve my knowledge and stuff. Is the use of nuclear weapons illegal? Is it considered genocide? Because it should be legally considered genocide. Because I asked this in the Discord, if anybody wanted to have a debate about it, but maybe people can debate it here in the chat or whatever. Should we make the use of nuclear weapons legally considered genocide? Because in order to actually use them, there must be a premeditated decision to murder a targeted group of people. That's basically the definition of genocide. But when it's nuclear weapons, all of a sudden it's excluded, because even though it logically, reasonably fits the definition, and when you look up this or whatever, it should especially be considered genocide because it carries with it the risk of omnicide, which is the death of everything. So why wouldn't we just make it simple to ban nuclear weapons or whatever, to make it illegal to use them? Because when you get to why doesn't international law work? Well, we have a huge double standard when it comes to domestic law, okay? Because we like to pretend we have a social contract with our governments, right? Where we give them the authority, the right to coerce us and and have what we call sovereignty over us as subjects, what we call citizens maybe nowadays. Okay, but in the international law level, nothing is binding, right? On the domestic level, the laws that they make are binding on the citizens, but at the international level, sovereignty goes from like the will of the people to elect the government. We are the sovereign, whatever power to the nation in modern democratic republican kind of conception. The old term of sovereignty was the traditional, like the monarch is the living body of sovereign power, and is literally derived from someone like King Charles. So you want to pretend like we have a system like this is where England and Canada are such like shams of a system, how we haven't collapsed. We have a like political hypocrisy going on of as far as this concept of a monarchy is being a constitutional monarchy. So we have it's like a symbolic whatever act, right? But like the sovereignty, I'm getting off the topic or whatever, but on international law or whatever, the nation is considered to be a sovereign equal when it deals with another nation, but they have the right to enter into treaties that are non-binding. So if they enter into a treaty, or they have the right to enter into treaties that are binding, and they have the right not to. And so there's a whole bunch of countries that have decided to try and ban nuclear weapons, that have entered into a treaty that is legally binding, that makes it illegal for that country to build nuclear weapons, which is what they're trying to force Iran to do. Say, we agree that nukes are so bad that we will bind ourselves to this narrative legally that we're bad people if we do it, and you're allowed to attack us and kill us or whatever and coerce us, right? But if a nation like the US and Israel chooses not to, or China or Russia chooses not to sign this agreement, there is no enforcement mechanism to actually have international law have any effect. So that's a clear, like, fatal, problem with international law. So I've gone on enough.
That's okay. So, yes, Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy. Wait, where's the yes? So this, oh, wrong comment. So I was going to say this is a movement led by Shahid Bolson. You know, we
Good
appreciate
mention at the moment. Yeah. We had talked about him earlier, and we were trying to determine if his narrative at the time was better to be buying into than other speakers on the topic of Israel versus Iran. And Shahid Bolson was saying Iran and Israel aren't really as much of enemies as you think they are. They kind of need each other to benefit from each other as enemies, right? But now that they're really going at it, it kind of would reveal some bankruptcy to that theory. So
I can't remember that. So I need to go back and watch some of his stuff.
Yeah. He might have
here it is. Oh, here it is right here. Okay, 3 days ago, I gotta watch this. The title says Iran, Israel, and the Theater of War. Egypt's handling of colonizer activists. Oh, I gotta watch that. It's 36 minutes long. And he just posted it like 3 days ago.
Sounds good. Me too. Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna go watch that. Maybe we could talk about it later, but Wesley had a really cute let me find it. It's not really cute, but really okay. The USA decides to whom the law applies, just like a dirty cop.
That's not the law, though. Everyone who knows anything about the law, that cannot be the law. That's the gaslighting that is. People want to start to believe that that's what the law is. Then it's like the law is both a utopia and a dystopia. It's non-existent, and the only way that it can exist, if you think that that's how it should be, is as a dystopia. And so that's,
I'm confused. You're not agreeing with what he's saying?
I'm saying I agree that the USA decides to whom the law applies, just like a dirty cop. But I'm saying it's problematic as far as the collective humanity's understanding of what the law even is, because people tend to see it as a positive force, as no matter how some nations tend to try and warp it the law represents justice, which represents good. And this is why it's important to talk about this Manichaeism stuff, because you can't have things in a binary or whatever and actually like solve societal problems like that. Like, this is the thing about sovereignty. As much as people want to say we solve the problem of sovereignty by taking the power away from the monarchy, investing it in the people. Okay, but that doesn't actually, it doesn't really work either. Okay, because let me look a little bit more.
And this is also, we should talk about this real quick. This is also a good point. Are you going to lose your thought if we?
Yeah, no, I just was the myth of the people as sovereign is a self-consuming fiction. So in democratic theory, the people are sovereign, but this collective subject is an abstraction that must constantly recreate itself through elections, protests, or constitutions, processes that expose its lack of fixed identity. So like the Ouroboros, popular sovereignty consumes its own boundaries. Who counts as the people to sustain itself? That has to be a definition that is constantly recreated over time. It's never going to be a satisfactory answer to say that the people are sovereign, and that's how we solve the dilemma of sovereignty. So, which is how you have the recurrence of Trump as king or not, right? Because people will decide on both sides of that issue. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so I gotta, before I get to this point that Antediluvian made, I gotta address this one. Okay, so Jimmy, I think he's talking about Shahid Bozen. Sorry, he sucks.
Theory.
Saying,
is that the?
I need to go watch this.
Yeah.
Nick from RBN exposed him on Syria. He supports Jelani, the ISIS Mossad. He's a CIA plant. So
Okay, we gotta watch that too.
I gotta go watch that.
Appreciate that, Jimmy.
Yep. So he said something else too, which was interesting about the taking away the United States veto rights. It's a good point. He's saying, well, France and UK will veto that.
Yeah.
Which is also in line with what we're talking about here. Okay. Let me find it. Jeez, the comments are blowing up. Okay. Antediluvian. All right. Comes down, the law comes down to force. At the end of the day, if you make nukes illegal, you have to be able to force compliance. How? They have nukes. And it's the same like with Americans with guns. How are you going to take away their guns? They have guns. Like
we tend to be critical of the might make right argument, but when we really inspect our own views on sovereignty, we kind of come up with well, we do need, like, sovereignty at its core is essentially the coercive power of the state, and without it, the nation is not able to be sovereign. And so ultimately, if we believe that sovereignty must have the right to force compliance, we kind of seem to believe in, maybe subconsciously, might makes right, which we typically attribute to fascism. So,
and we could argue that, okay, well, like you were saying, it should be considered genocide to drop a nuke. Okay, well, we're already going through a genocide. What's the punishment?
Yeah.
Like,
this is where we're in lawlessness, and I feel like this is where the anarchist comes out in me, where it's like, if we see how broken and impossible to perfect the system of law is, all we have is lawlessness that is done in the name of law. And so why do people need the fig leaf? If we embrace what reality is, then a lawless world makes more sense because it's more honest, but that would be more chaotic. And this is where anarchist theory is a little bit unresolved. So I don't really appreciate that abyss of violence that invites. So kind of pull back away from that. But then we haven't resolved the issues of sovereignty, how to actually make it workable,
oh my gosh, are you being Lance? I think he's being facetious. Yeah, Wesley, like, the Supreme Court is interpreted into oblivion. Except, I mean, we can't have a grenade yet, so I guess that's next.
And it's tricky for me to I don't know as much American history, but to try and like place the Constitution in the right context and considering how people are very critical of the founding fathers, and so for them to have been the ones in control of creating such a powerful document, because Jacqueline has a good comment. She's saying like slavery was legal. How can laws be moral and just when slavery was legal? So there's a whole section of people that were not involved in the creation of the Constitution who have yet to have their voices included in the foundation of the law of their society. And it's part of the patriotism to support the Constitution, and like right wing ideology, I feel in general is to be supportive of constitutions and powers that be as they are, as opposed to arguing that they should we should have the right to change them. So I think that constitutions should be living documents. They should not be made so difficult to change that we are stuck with them no matter what, and we're not able to evolve. If circumstances have evolved to demonstrate that the document is flawed, we need to be able to update it.
The Constitution is supposed to be rewritten every 19 years, so that I forgot who said that, one of the founding fathers. So the next generation of citizens, as the country evolves, the next generation of citizens will have a say. But that never happened.
Yeah, that's have to be if they like to advocate for pragmatism and stuff, they need to recognize how impractical the law is and how much idealism there is in just saying, well, I understand how much the law has failed us, but let's give it another chance, guys. The reason why we do that is because you're faced with the abyss of anarchism. If you get rid of the law, what do you have? We don't know. So it's better the devil you know. So.
Well, the thing about, I got another one. The thing about the laws is like, in order for certain people to remain in power and do it lawfully, there has to be a dehumanization process of the other to justify in their mentally insane minds how this law is practical and moral to the people.
Right.
Because they're not the people, we are the people.
Right.
They're like,
where it does get important to actually have that difficult conversation about who gets to decide who is the people, because we do fight over, I know the people well enough that I am the representative of the people and you are not. I'm the real Slim Shady. Right?
I'm the real Slim Shady. Lance said, okay, Lance, were you being facetious?
Oh, what's that?
Here we go.
That is basically that's where it's headed, this legal dilemma, because you either need to grant like a institution like the United Nations the actual authority to enforce order over nations, which would make a one world government inevitably, which is actually one of the things that America has been very hard line against. Go figure, I wonder why, because then they would actually be held accountable. But then you have a whole nother problem to deal with that's not about America's imperialism. It's about, do we actually want a one world government? Because that could be like worse than America. If you can imagine, right? What would be worse than the United States doing what it's doing today, right? But a one world government would give more power to an institution than the America currently holds. So, but then if you want to try and come up with a antithesis, what's the opposite of a one world government? They're coming up with this multipolar world where now nations have the sovereign power to be unaccountable. And if we ever try and develop a system that can hold them bindingly accountable, we risk developing a one world government. So we must have the anarchy of nationalism, if you want to put it that way, of equal but free nations, and no nation is like the irony would be equal about. Look at all the different sizes of nations and different power of mass of like you want to. That's the act of calling sovereign nations equal, when some nations like the Caribbean nations have no army to protect themselves really to speak of, right? Like their power is economic in some senses. A lot of nations, right? There's so many strengths and weaknesses to all the different nations around the world that to treat them like we're just equal on paper, right? As far as legality. And not even that. When we see that Palestine can't even get their state recognized, right? So
we got to get to Pakistan. Got to get to Pakistan.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah. Okay. So
I've been waiting to hear. I'm very curious about what you've uncovered about
right. Yeah. Let's
Pakistan and India, because India and Israel, they're allies, correct? India
right. Well, India and Israel, and this is part of the problem because India actually kind of has a bit of a need for Iran, at least historically, and then so the question of like what is it that's complicating things for India's developing stronger ties with Israel? Like historically, it had good ties with Iran and stuff, and I would say it's the Hindutva fascists that are making it difficult for India to know who their friends and enemies are. But
can you make that bigger?
Yeah. Is that too big?
And what is that blue thing?
That's weird.
That they're trying to sell.
I don't know. Let's not get distracted. Why India can't pick sides in Israel-Iran conflict. This is from June 13th, 2025. India shares cordial ties with both Israel and Iran, which appear on the brink of an all-out war. New Delhi has enhanced relations with Tel Aviv in recent years, while trade and connectivity links it to Tehran. Can New Delhi continue to balance its relationship with both if the conflict in West Asia escalates? So India has been doing this balancing act also with Russia and Ukraine. I don't think it can. I think its ability to carry this on is over, and they're counting on people not recognizing that they no longer have a balanced relationship. They have been forced to shift towards Israel and the U.S., whether they like it or not, and they just need to. If people want to believe that they still have a balanced approach, that's their mistake. So. Israel's military said Iran launched 100 drones in retaliation. We all know this, blah, blah, blah. The escalation of tensions has sparked concerns of a full-fledged war between the two rivals in West Asia. Israel said its strikes on Iran targeted nuclear facilities. But this is kind of going over stuff we already know. India has close ties with both nations, has called for de-escalation and dialogue and diplomacy. So nations only do that when they want to kind of appear to be neutral. It's necessary for them. They feel they can get away with it. So we are deeply concerned at the recent developments between Iran and Israel. India urges both sides to avoid any escalatory steps. Existing channels of dialogue should be utilized. Issuing a travel advisory. Let's take a closer look. Okay, now that we've done that. India's ties with Israel. India enjoys strategic ties with Israel. The relationship has grown in the last decade, particularly in the sectors of defense, intelligence, and technology. Israel is one of India's top defense suppliers, arming the South Asian country with drones, radar systems, and missiles. India showed public support for Israel within hours of October 7, 2023 attacks by Hamas. India and Israel share similar concerns about extremism and terrorism, for citizens of both countries being killed during the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. New Delhi has pressed for dialogue and diplomacy to resolve Israel's war in Gaza, which has killed more than 55,000 people in the narrow strip, far more. But not getting on that today. Abstaining in the UN General Assembly on Thursday from a vote on a draft resolution that demanded an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. India's permanent representative to the UN ambassador Parvataneni Harish said that India has previously also abstained from resolutions on the Israel-Palestine issue. And so they should not be abstaining. They should be signing with the Palestinians on this, but definitely not with the U.S. But an abstention is this this pretending like false neutrality, but that the UN gives them a mechanism to portray that perception. So their vote today is in continuation of this, in the belief that there is no other way to resolve conflicts but through dialogue and diplomacy, as they tried to engage in a conflict with Pakistan. So a joint effort should be directed towards bringing the two sides closer. For these reasons, we would abstain on this resolution. India and Iran share historical and cultural relations. Post-Cold War, New Delhi has tried to maintain cordial relations with most countries in West Asia. Iran, which shares borders with Afghanistan and Pakistan, is a key player in the region. India and Iran share common concerns about the Taliban's Sunni extremism and Pakistan's role in Afghanistan. At least that's was the conventional understanding. And trade and connectivity have defined New Delhi's ties with Tehran. However, the U.S.'s sanctions on Iran have affected India's relations. So in 2009, America sanctioned Iranian oil amid its concerns about Tehran's nuclear program and its ballistic missile development. And India has not imported crude oil from Iran since the U.S. sanctions. So
you said India has not imported crude oil
from Iran since the U.S. sanctions. Yeah, so I was going to share this other tab here. This is captured on the Archive Today website. Israel outweighs Iran in trade with India since 2019, shows data. India's exports to Iran dropped to 1.2 billion as of December 2023 on a rolling 4-quarter basis. India's exports to Israel grew to 6.1 billion in the same period. So the longer that the trade imbalance develops, the harder it is for them to claim that they are in fact neutral. It just seems like to the Iranians, I would imagine that India is trying to play them. So this article is from April 15, 2024, keep in mind. Trade links with Israel have strengthened in the past few years, even as the value of goods exchanged with Iran has diminished. Iran accounted for $3.9 billion worth of India's exports in the 4 quarters ending December 2019, compared to $3.6 billion to Israel. However, India's exports to Iran dropped to $1.2 billion as of December 2023 on a rolling 4-quarter basis, while exports to Israel grew to $6.1 billion in the same period. So this graph is one of those graphs that kind of tells it all, you know. But I wanted to kind of move to other articles, especially because we used up a lot of time.
exports from India.
Okay, this one's the one I would go to. This the Diplomat. I need to look into what's problematic about the Diplomat, but we'll talk about that another time. So this article is how Indian PM Modi is spinning the ceasefire with Pakistan as a victory. So pictures of Modi in an Indian Air Force fighter pilot uniform are all over the country as the BJP works overtime to project him as a dynamic leader who delivered victory. So it's going to maybe take me a little bit to kind of lay it out, but I think if you look at the different articles that are coming out here, you start to understand that Pakistan seems to be being driven towards allying with Iran based on just geopolitical circumstances and things that would seem to benefit their nation if they make the rational choice, except that Pakistan also seems to be speaking out of both sides of their mouth, because I heard a statement coming out that they fully support Iran. Pakistan reaffirms full diplomatic support for Iran, but then they also have just recently, Trump hosts a Pakistani army chief and they're turning they're using the thing that Trump has claimed that he was the one who signed he's the one who got the ceasefire done between Pakistan and India, and there is a narrative diversion between what Narendra Modi seems to need to sell to his base at home for the narrative that he was the one. The ceasefire is only from, like, let me just switch to the other tab real quick.
This is kind of confusing me.
Yeah, Modi reminds Trump no trade talk or U.S. role in Sindoor pause and declines his invitation. So there seems to be a little bit of a diplomatic spat happening because Trump is hosting the Pakistan Army general, and they're talking about how they're forging strategic ties. And I'm trying to understand how this is kind of all playing out. You know, it is, like you're saying, it's confusing. It confuses me too.
Well, this is what's confusing. Okay. India is part of BRICS.
Exactly. So
and then
India is in a completely contradictory position where it has been balancing, playing both sides, but it is going to have to pick one side or the other. It's either out in BRICS or out of BRICS, right?
Yeah, because they added to BRICS. Now it's called BRICS Plus. It's like LGBTQI plus. They added let me look it up. They added Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, somebody else, United Arab Emirates, and I think the last person that joined was Indonesia. Okay. Out of all those countries I named, some of them are part of the Greater Israel Project. So India aligning itself with Israel, like, how do they think that's going to work?
We have a really interesting puzzle to sort out. We're starting to get some of the pieces, but I don't think we quite know how it really fits together. But I think we'll get there maybe if we keep working at it. So, because we got to see who are the new BRICS countries, and now we got to try and analyze what are the relations of these separate countries with each other. And then once you do enough homework on that, a broader picture will emerge about what is the next phase of development of this. What's happening is the multipolar world coming into existence, or is the U.S. hegemony somehow reasserting itself? We have to wait and see, and we have to read stuff like this, I guess. So let me just actually get to this now. Pictures of Modi, how Indian PM Modi is spinning the ceasefire with Pakistan as a victory. Pictures of Modi in an Indian Air Force fighter pilot uniform are all over the country as the BJP works overtime to project him as the dynamic leader who delivered victory, in power quotes, whatever you want to call those, by Kavita Chaudhry, May 29th, 2025. So getting a little old, but still quite topical. So weeks after the India-Pakistan ceasefire was announced, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said at a rally in Bikaner, Rajasthan, "It's not blood, but hot sindoor that courses through my veins." An obvious reference to Operation Sindoor, the military strike by the Indian Defense Forces on Pakistan. Sindoor is the vermilion powder that married Hindu women apply in the parting of their hair. The operation was reportedly named by Modi himself. He said the strikes were aimed at avenging the honor of the women who were widowed by the terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Jammu, and Kashmir on April 22. So all that stuff about the Sindoor thing, it's just dog whistling to the Hindu supremacists, right? We could just leave it at that. Terrorists had gunned down 25 tourists and one local pony rider. We already, that's kind of old news. I'm trying to save time. If you don't know that, please read up on the conflict. Operation Sindoor has been hailed by the rank and file of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party as a befitting reply to wipe out Islamic terror and avenge Hindu pride. The fact that the defense establishment endorsed the Sindoor imagery in a big way pumped up the right wing and Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, RSS, is supporters who started dreaming of reclaiming all of Kashmir. The RSS is the ideological and parent organization of the BJP RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat has on several occasions called for Pakistan-administered Kashmir's reintegration into India. And if you don't know yet at this juncture, RSS is the oldest fascist organization in the world. So therefore, when the strikes came to an abrupt end with the declaration of the ceasefire on May 10th, it angered BJP supporters who viewed it as a surrender, unfinished business, and anticlimactic. So I wanted to focus on this because I worry that with what's happening now, there's nothing to say that this is over between India and Pakistan. I think what determines whether or not they're going to go back to war or not is if they re-sign that water treaty, or if they use that water treaty as an excuse to go back to war, or like. So anyway, you can see that some of the angered BJP supporters on X are saying things like, "We failed to hammer the final nail in the coffin of Pakistan. We can't risk our national security in hands of an incompetent PM." So it seems like what Trump has done, if he really did, like, this is where we might be inclined to, without doing our fact checking, just say, what do we think is most likely to happen? Is Trump likely to be lying about his administration being responsible for causing this ceasefire to actually happen? Do they actually get some credit there? And I'm thinking probably a little bit at least. Okay, like Mark Rubio and JD Vance were sent to talk to a whole bunch of people on both sides of that conflict, and whatever was said behind doors, we don't know, somehow managed to end something in 4 days that I thought was at least going to go on for who knows how long. Like, it could have been the next Ukraine thing, right? But what Trump did was anger the Hindutva fascists by forcing them into a ceasefire they didn't want. So that's something I think that the left communists, we should pay attention to if that's true. So just to kind of put a pin on that, right? So what made matters worse was that U.S. President Donald Trump boasted that he mediated the ceasefire and publicly announced it first on his social media handle, much to the shock and dismay of warmongering right-wingers. Gaudy media, government-friendly lapdog media, television anchors like Arnab Goswami even vented their frustration on air, describing the post as typical Trump overreach and vehemently denouncing the U.S. president. Now, I suppose we can try and ask ourselves if this is a psyop designed to make us think that India is not in perfect lockstep with the U.S., but I think because India is playing this balancing act, then the U.S. actually does have to pressure them, and they're maybe not as united as much of a united front as we think, whatever. Just because they are all fascists, whatever, doesn't mean that they are in agreement with how to proceed, right? How to dominate the world. So Trump reiterated at every opportunity, especially at press conferences, that it was he who had brokered the ceasefire by bribing both countries, India and Pakistan, with lucrative trade deals. Which, by the way, if we want to, I don't really think that there's any actual deals signed, but they're working them out, I guess. So the ignominy could not have been greater. According to RSS insiders, even the Sangh Parivar, an umbrella grouping of Hindutva organizations, was flummoxed with the announcement of a ceasefire. In his press briefing on the morning of May 10th, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri indicated that India was in a position of dominance. Hours later, on the same day, India had capitulated and agreed to a ceasefire. Sangh insiders were worried as India's much vaunted image of military invincibility was in tatters. Their dream of achieving Akhand Bharat, undivided India, which is basically their version of Greater Israel, had been rudely jolted by powers like China that had aided and bolstered Pakistan's military might, as evidenced in the four-day conflict.
Wait.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Go down some. Okay, they're of achieving Akhand Bharat, undivided India, which is, it's like their version of Greater Israel. So,
well, maybe we shouldn't. I just learning of this term right now, but yeah, it seems like on first impression, my whatever cold reaction to that is that sounds like a Greater Israel fascist nationalist expansionary imperialist project. Yeah.
Okay. You can keep going. You can keep going.
Okay.
I think they're having a little spat in the chat.
I may have sparked a little bit of a debate about anarchism and international law and stuff. I don't know. I have to check in with you guys in a bit. But
I know it's going so fast, and I had to make the screen big so I could, because I'm trying to learn a little more about this. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The song's discomforture was grounded in the fact that recently, despite its unease, the RSS has been compelled to support the Modi government's announcement that it will conduct a caste census. Excuse me, which is kind of surprising, but both the RSS and Modi had repeatedly scoffed at the opposition's demand for enumerating caste in the population census, whereby the actual numbers of socially disadvantaged groups, i.e. the other backward classes, would be revealed. With critical state elections like the one in Bihar on the anvil, the Modi government realized the political necessity of announcing a caste census. So what kind of tipped me to find this story was I was looking for if the conflict or the outcome of the conflict had destabilized the Indian government or put Modi's popularity in jeopardy. And it seems like it has jeopardized some of his, if he doesn't, like Trump has a problem with MAGA, right? He used them to get voted. Now he has the power that he needed them to get into office, but he doesn't need them anymore. So is he going to be true to his base or not? So, but I think the U.S. is trying to force Modi's hand to support the U.S. against India's interests, of course, which is why I never expected it, why India would see it as a good idea to work with the U.S., except that they have their biases and their ideologies that are opposite of mine. So not everyone in India, obviously. There's a whole bunch of go communists in India that are doing a good job or whatever. But anyway.
So I just want to say, I wouldn't call Akan Barat. I wouldn't use Greater Israel as a.
Sometimes it's not a perfect comparison.
Right, because it's not an expansion of India. It's more of a unification. So it's more like Greater India, where they're more unified.
Like Germany's claim to unify Austria because they're German peoples. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me kind of pivot to, or maybe I should just see, is that a good spot to leave that article? Okay, let me just carry on. And then I'm going to pivot shortly to, I want to look at, I think the Pakistani government's been more destabilized by that little four-day conflict than the Indian government has. But that's not really so much because India was so successful and so much more powerful. It's because Pakistan has been suffering from political instability for a really long time, and their long-term contradictions are catching up to them. Like the whole stuff with Imran Khan, like you have to recognize how that has left them in a really bad position to be trying to fight a war right now with all that, confusion. And so I think that they're kind of crawling to the U.S. to try and see what they can get for their, sycophancy, whatever. But
I guess I'm trying to see how it ties into the Iran-Israel conflict.
Right. Well, because Pakistan is shares a border with Iran, and so when I'm seeing the Israeli spies and Iranian spies are all getting arrested and killed and stuff and carrying off all these operations right now, one thing, if I have time to get around to it, I'll just at least share the headlines. There's some espionage things to follow in the fallout of the war there. Both Pakistan and India are arresting each other's spies and revealing each other's networks, just like Iran and Israel. And it's all about who's better at the great game, basically, right? So
basically it's in Iran's interest for Pakistan to win this conflict with India, because if they don't, India can kind of set up shop in Pakistan, closer to Iran, to attack them.
God damn, I hate they put a video at the bottom of the page and it activates, and you have to go to the bottom of the page to mute it. Sorry.
No worries. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, could you repeat it? Sorry.
I'm trying to connect dots. So I'm saying it's in Iran's best interest for Pakistan to win this conflict, because if they don't, that gives Iran the ability to move into Pakistan and get closer to Iran to attack Iran.
I mean, that's
behalf of Israel.
Something of an oversimplification, but I think it's generally speaking probably correct to say it's
generally speaking.
Tentative analysis is it seems to be in Iran's best interest for Pakistan to win in conflict with India, and it seems to be in Pakistan's best interest for Iran to win in a conflict against Israel. Okay, so that would make them more natural allies, but we have to understand the nuances of Pakistan, because it's way too close to the U.S. for comfort for me. Okay, so it's all about like, whether are they gonna do what's right for their nation, or are they comprador elites, and are they gonna sell them out? So
in Afghanistan, well, we've destabilized them so much.
I found this was interesting. This was from May 14th. This is before this conflict broke out. So it's like just before the Israeli strike on Iran, trying to decapitate the military leadership and everything. Pakistan arrested an Indian spy near the Iran border, says the ex-foreign minister Aziz Chaudhry. Pakistan has apprehended another Indian spy near the Iran-Pakistan border. Former Foreign Secretary Azaz Ahmad Chaudhry revealed, marking the most significant espionage-related arrest since Kulbhushan Jadav's capture in 2016, which I don't even know, because I'll have to read up on that and learn about that. According to Chaudhry, the alleged spy, identified as Chakrawarti, had been operating a business in Iran and was arrested in Balochistan while crossing into Pakistan. He accused India of using both Iranian and Afghan territories to orchestrate covert operations against Pakistan. Chaudhry called on Pakistani authorities to intensify diplomatic engagement with Iran to prevent its territory from being misused for hostile intelligence activities. The former top diplomat also criticized Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent speech, accusing him of recycling old rhetoric and ignoring key mediation efforts, including U.S. President Donald Trump's recognition of the latest ceasefire between India and Pakistan. So this is where Modi has just said that that's a pause, and that it's not necessarily something that you can count on to stay, right? So that is what he's condemning, saying you're recycling old rhetoric, trying to say that ceasefire is just a pause. We're not actually working on developing actual mediation efforts. So that is bad of Modi. He should not be trying to dog whistle to his base, so that he can potentially drag that war back into being. So Modi's wounded ego could lead to unpredictable decisions, Chaudhry warned, knowing that Indian media's treatment of Iran's foreign minister was deplorable and could shift Tehran's view of India as an unreliable partner. This actually, I don't know if I want to cover it before, because I mentioned we were going to get to it, because was it Lance? Yeah, had brought it up about this claim that Pakistan is willing to attack Israel with nuclear weapons, because this was the thing about Pakistan's voicing support for Iran, and then this is the Indian propaganda machine, I think, has created these fake videos for whatever reason. So Foreign Minister Dar rubbishes fake fabricated video of Iranian official about Pakistan attacking Israel with nuclear weapons. Nearly 80 people, including top army officers, were killed, while civilians were among over 300 wounded in Iran as a result of Israeli strikes on military sites and private residences on June 13th. and Iran subsequently launched its retaliation, blah, blah, blah. Posts from multiple Indian and other users on social media platforms and Indian media outlets since Sunday shared a video of Iranian National Security Council member Mohsen Rezai claiming that he said Pakistan told Iran that if Israel drops the nuclear bomb on Tehran, Pakistan would retaliate in kind amid current tensions. However, a fact-checking platform iVerify Pakistan concluded that the video was doctored and the Iranian official had not made any such statement. So this is the era of deep fakes, everyone, we all know. So I'm inclined to believe the Iranian authorities that are denying that their Iranian National Security Council member would say that. This man would be fired if he was saying that and that they didn't want him to say that, or they would not be denying it, right? So it doesn't make sense for them to say that and then deny it. It would make sense for Israelis to do something like that because they do that kind of lying through their teeth all the fucking time, trying to gaslight and like give people psychosis, whatever. But that would be projection. So, addressing the matter during today's Senate session, Foreign Minister Dar said there is a video on social media where an Iranian general was quoted as saying, "If Israel attacks Iran, then Pakistan will attack Israel with nuclear weapons. This is irresponsible and false news." This is very irresponsible and very false news, because with that kind of a claim, it is designed to potentially trigger nuclear war, because it's escalating the nuclear threat deterrence ladder, rhetoric, right? So that's a kind of law. You know how you're not allowed to incite violence, or we're talking about the binding domestic law. People aren't allowed to make those kinds of threats because it's extremely irresponsible. Someone should be arrested for that. State actors, on the other hand, allowed to do whatever the fuck they want? Hell no, okay? It's time to put an end to that that precedence that's acceptable behavior. So he said, from our side, there's been no such statement. It was fabricated. So if that helps, Lance, to have your answer there. I see Jacqueline's heading out here. Sorry, Abby, Michael, I'm getting tired for any of this to make sense, but apart from that, really enjoyed the screens. Yeah.
No, I'm over here trying to see where the military bases are. Where U.S. has military bases in the Middle East, trying to see if we have any in Pakistan, and also trying to see where military bases India has.
Yeah. If you're still there, Jacqueline, sorry that I put on so much intellectual work on you so late at night. Hopefully you can just rewatch the stream later. So, have a good night.
Good night.
My brain just got carried away today with these topics because I find it fascinating, as terrifying as it all is, and as horrific and disgusting as it is. If you have an interest in politics and economics and stuff, there's some very interesting changes like that. Is it Lenin quote? There's decades that happen in weeks or whatever. I don't remember. I totally butchered that, but that's basically what we're going through. So it's a fascinating period of history to be living in. So, so what I want trying to get to Pakistan, because I was saying Pakistan was more destabilized than India. So I kind of demonstrate how Modi is on the back foot with his base there, but he still seems to be in his
I don't see it.
So
I don't see a U.S. base in Pakistan. I
don't know if there's a U.S.
I see
base
one in
Pakistan.
Iran and one in India. Maybe two in India.
I just know that they have had very good ties with the Pakistani military has never really been targeted by the U.S. directly. You know, it's always some other nation that's been invaded. Why is it that Pakistan hasn't? It's got the same kind of resources that Afghanistan. You know, it would be just as useful for the Americans to dominate, just like they did Afghanistan. There, it would be right on the doorstep of China, would have completely squash the Belt and Road Initiative kind of thing if they had a successful imperialist campaign there. So it seems to me like they've had some kind of friendly government there that it's in U.S.'s interests for now not to destroy and destabilize Pakistan because it's more useful if they have the friendly government there. But there's only so long that they can keep that going because the Pakistani people are really fed up with their country being like run by foreigners and compradors and stuff. So we should watch with some hope, I think, some like moderate hope that the Pakistani people are going to be able to resolve these long-standing issues. It just might be difficult with like if World War III breaks out, they might not be able to accomplish anything democratic until after this kind of 2030 or something. But maybe I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about. So
there's an Indian military base in. There's an Indian military base in Saudi Arabia, kind of close to Iran. Closer to Iran. And one in Afghanistan.
Is a keystone nation. That's an interesting comment.
What do you say?
Well, we're getting a little frozen here. Those ads.
So Pakistan
this is what I noticed. I gotta have to get to this article because when you read stuff from India and Pakistan, ads and stuff, because they're having a harder time, I guess, keeping the page running without significant sponsorship. So let me just read this so I can stop it from slowing my computer down. Government can collapse in 5 minutes. Pakistan's ruling coalition on edge as allies blast federal budget. June 17, 2025. I found it interesting that Trump is meeting with the Pakistan army guy. Oh, go away, you damn ads. I can't stop for 2 seconds. He's meeting with the Pakistan military and not with the Pakistan government officials. So that's kind of like a little bit of a giveaway, I think. Pakistan's ruling coalition is showing signs of strain as two key allies, PMLN, PPP, and MQMP. I won't even try and learn what those are about. Launched a scathing attack on the federal budget for the upcoming fiscal year, raised questions about...
What did you mean when you say that's kind of a giveaway?
Sorry. Go ahead.
What did you mean when you said that's kind of a giveaway? He's probably trying to get Pakistan to
I think it's a giveaway that...
Go ahead.
I think it's a giveaway as to Pakistan being in a really weak position right now, the Pakistani government, because they should be sending their government officials, like their foreign minister, to be making trade deals, not their army.
Mm-hmm.
And the government in Pakistan doesn't really have much deals on their behalf. I don't know if I got a bad enough signal if you guys can hear what I'm saying. But I think that the fact that Pakistan military official is meeting with Trump because he's the one who's holding power and can make decisions in Pakistan, whatever, is a bit telling about the state of Pakistani politics right now. You know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. And then maybe if I read this article, it will kind of elucidate the point.
Okay.
So, Pakistan's ruling coalition's two key allies have launched a scathing attack on the federal budget for the upcoming fiscal year, raising questions about its passage in the National Assembly. This comes as Pakistan has increased its defense spending by a staggering 20%. Oh my God, these ads are killing me. After last month's conflict with India, even as it navigates financial challenges and a sluggish economy. According to a report in Dawn, several lawmakers from PPP and MQMP, both Sindh-based parties, voiced strong objections to the discontent primarily from the expansion of the tax net and the allegedly arbitrary powers being granted to the Federal Reserve Board, Federal Board of Revenue, which critics say could target small businesses and non-filers disproportionately, the report said. The dissenting voices also slammed the Shehbaz Sharif coalition government for neglecting Sindh, particularly Karachi, and expressed anger over the minimal allocation for the under construction Sukur Hyderabad motorway. What the fuck? A proposed tax, 18% tax. Okay, what the fuck? This is why they can't even read news out of Pakistan, because they can't afford to sell you the news without making it impossible to read. So a proposed 18% tax on solar panels further fueled frustration among members. Okay, whatever is the party policy, how can we vote for an anti-Sindh budget when the Federation treats Sindh stepmotherly? PPP's Nabil Gabol asked during the debate. Gabol warned that the current government stands on the strength of PPP's votes. Okay. And could collapse within 5 minutes if that support is withdrawn. So like the Dutch government collapsed, the Pakistani government is this close to collapsing, and so the army is really just gets whatever it wants, or it will force a changing government in like tomorrow so that it can get what it wants. But it's in this weak government's best interest. I'm just gonna stop sharing this tab now to carry on the sham that they're in government. And when you want to look in, like, I'm probably running out of time, right? But there's a couple other things. There's also like more destabilized, like terrorism, extremism, whatever you want to call it, separatist groups. There's a worsening security situation in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They only have like 4 or 5 provinces, so it's like what keeps a nation together. When those things start to show like tensions, your external enemies become less of a problem than your internal enemies, and then your country's going to tear itself apart. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's important to recognize what's in the U.S.'s best interest here. If you want to see, is the U.S. want World War III or not? I think what's in India's best interest is not World War III, so they can keep playing their balancing game. Okay, but if the U.S. can make Pakistan collapse and implode like Syria, then they can have a huge problem on Iran's doorstep, which would give potentially enough instability to give Israel an advantage, kind of thing. And so,
which is basically what I was saying, right?
Right. But if India is forced to abandon any hope of good ties with Iran, they lose access to Central Asia, which they kind of need for their counter to the Belt and Road Initiative, which is they want to be the West's Belt and Road version, India's version of that, right? The capitalist version of that. So that's why I don't understand how India is allowed to be in part of BRICS. Right.
I'm just Googling, what does BRICS think about the Pakistan-India conflict? Like, how are they still a part of BRICS? I don't know. BRICS must resolve India-Pakistan. Okay. This is from May 20th. Let me go ahead and share it. It's going to take me a second.
Have a good night, Mastermind. It's got to make dinner. Thanks for
Good night,
hanging
Mastermind.
out. See you next time.
I don't know what's going on. Okay, here we go. I just gotta know. All right. So the headline says BRICS must resolve India-Pakistan tensions to protect its credibility. You think? Oh, it didn't share?
Oh, up there, yeah.
It's like thundering over here. So
Yeah.
that might have something to do with it. Oh, Michael, I gotta tell you this. I was in the car the other day and lightning struck like right on the other side of the house next door to me. Oh my gosh. It was the scariest shit I've ever experienced. And my eyes got like really red, like I had a red glare in my eyes. I couldn't hear out of my ear, the side that I was on. And it was like ringing. Oh, I ran in the house so fast and got under the covers and never looked back.
Yeah, unfortunately, we never seem to get as extreme storms here in Windsor as some of the places in the U.S. seem to be getting. But
Yeah,
I had my power knocked out yesterday. Some heavy
lightning
rain.
struck a tree in our front yard. This was a while ago. And my dad had to, save up some money to get it taken down.
Wesley's gonna get out of here too. Have a good
Okay,
one.
Wesley.
Thanks for hanging out. I know it's a long one tonight, so
Yeah, I
appreciate
just
it.
want to look at this really quickly. Pakistan's envoy to China, Ambassador Khalil Hashmi, has raised a critical concern that could challenge the political credibility and inclusivity narrative of the BRICS bloc. If BRICS continues to exclude Pakistan at India's behest, its global message of equity, cooperation, and multilateral reform will ring hollow. Oh, well, okay.
That's what I'm saying. They keep when they keep introducing people, they're inevitably forced to choose who to let in and who to keep out. Like Brazil also fucked Venezuela over, and that's not good for those of us who are like, you're gonna let the socialist, more disenfranchised, poor third world nations or whatever, not gonna let them have a leg up into BRICS. What is BRICS really about? Like.
Okay, I'm just gonna read a little more and we'll let you go because I know it's late. Pakistan's exclusion from BRICS, a structural challenge, despite. Maybe I should read this first because it talks about the global south. In a recent interview with South China Morning Post, Hashmi made it clear that while Pakistan supports multipolarity and the expansion of global governance platforms like BRICS, political obstruction by one member state, India, undermines the bloc's stated commitment to represent the global south. Ooh. His remarks come amid growing frustration from Islamabad over what it sees as India's unilateral leverage in shaping BRICS membership outcomes based on bilateral disputes. Can you hear that thunder?
Yeah.
Pakistan's exclusion from BRICS, a structural challenge. Despite the BRICS expansion in 2023, which welcomed new members including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Iran, Pakistan remains absent from the grouping. There has been no formal process initiated to include Pakistan, even though Islamabad has repeatedly expressed its willingness to join BRICS and contribute to the vision and multipolarity. I mean, India is gonna have to give it up. Like, India, you cannot be friends with Israel and be in BRICS. Like, what?
You can't be in BRICS and try and hold Pakistan down like that,
Right, right. Okay. So Ambassador Hashmi underscored that Pakistan's continued exclusion due to Indian opposition contradicts BRICS' own foundational principles of inclusivity, sovereign equality, and mutual respect. If political disagreements are allowed to dictate the platform's engagement, he argued, BRICS risks becoming a politically fragmented bloc rather than a cohesive counterbalance to Western-led institutions. Let's see. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Recent India-Pakistan tensions heighten risks to regional stability. Well, we kind of already went through that, so I'm just going to read this. China's stance and Pakistan's diplomatic calculations. Okay, China, a founding BRICS member and a close strategic partner of Pakistan. This is getting dicey. Has supported Islamabad's case for inclusion in multilateral forums such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. While Beijing has not officially opposed India's position within BRICS, Chinese officials have stressed the need for the bloc to be inclusive and politically neutral.
Yeah, that's important. Politically neutral. I think China's trying real hard not to look like they're dominating the organization.
Hashmi reiterated that Pakistan does not expect any state to take sides, but emphasized that neutrality should not enable one member to use its position to block another. He pointed out that constructive mediation by China or even by external actors such as former U.S. President Donald Trump should be encouraged if it contributes to de-escalating regional tensions, particularly over Kashmir. Huh. Yeah, that's a pickle.
That's where I don't know why we should be calling. People are so convinced we should be calling all these leaders so stupid and stuff, because this is an extremely complicated matters to be, no matter who you are, to be trying to sort through. So
we got to follow this one because this is going to get sticky.
Yeah,
maybe Rondo says maybe because India has the numbers.
that's what I'm thinking. I think China might have made a calculated risk as to if India can be run by a different ruling party that's not fascist, then maybe the communist sympathetic population in India has the power to take India into like to the next level with BRICS and everything. But it hinges, I think, on getting this RSS and BJP party out of power, and I don't know how China can effectively do that without seeing as manipulating foreign intervention in their neighbors' politics, which is supposed to not be allowed, but every country does that, obviously. So
India has the better cuisine. Lance.
Yeah, I don't know. I like both. I really do like both Indian and Chinese cuisine. I don't know if I have a favorite.
I think he's talking about India versus Pakistan cuisine.
Yeah, that's probably true. I never really had Pakistan food. So.
Me either. They're having a summit this year in Russia. Didn't that already happen? I feel like I remember. Yeah, that already happened.
Yeah, there's so many summits every year.
Because what's his name? Traore, Burkina Faso. He was invited. So they're saying blocking, I'm going to just read this, blocking Pakistan while admitting states that have deep bilateral frictions with other BRICS members exposes a double standard that could erode the group's moral authority. Well, we're just going to have to keep watching it. So yeah, y'all, thanks for sticking around with us. That was a lot.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I get a little bit with the developments going on. If I either get apathetic and I'm like, oh, it's too much to follow, or I get like supercharged and I'm like, it's too much to follow, but I'm going to follow all of it anyway. Like,
this was definitely a rabbit hole of show, so we appreciate you sticking with us for it. And hopefully we can talk about.
Hopefully you learned something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I learned something, but what I learned is just giving me even more questions and questions and questions. So
exactly, I saw a funny meme about that today. Whatever, it's like a stair arch thing where when you're young, it's like I got so many questions, I gotta find all the answers. And then it's like, I'm finding so many answers. I'm doing so good. Found so many answers. I'm finding even more questions. Now I realize my life is all about questions. Okay.
I think it was Lance that said in a comment a while back that he didn't even know that Pakistan and India were beefing. So,
well, that's when it would happen so fast. If you had gone on vacation for a week and were out of the news cycle for that long, you basically could have missed the entire conflict and not even known. So don't feel bad. It just means you're living your life.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I'm gonna end it on this little video clip. If you guys want to stick around, I can't remember this man's name. He's a professor from Columbia University. I like I think I think I subscribed to him on Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, on YouTube, because he has some interesting things to say. But his name escapes me right at the moment. But anyway, with that being said, should we say our goodbyes?
Yeah.
Oh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We forgot to say that.
What's this guy's name? Jeffrey Sachs. Isn't that
Yes.
him?
Wait.
Yeah.
Jeffrey. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Anyway, hopefully that's it. Yeah.
It's Jeffrey something. Yeah, something like that.
I don't really. There's a certain kind of group of establishment, like white guys that seem to be like, this is the same thing as the independent media, whatever. Like the Tucker Carlson's going independent. Right? I wonder about Jeffrey Sachs, because I thought he was like a supporter of imperialist economics for the longest time, but now he's out strongly against the Ukraine war and stuff. So I'm a little suspicious of him.
Was he? Because he's he's an economist.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs, or was of Goldman Sachs. I think he's been like one of these bankers or whatever, economist who's been working for the government his whole life, but now he's got a divergence of opinion. I don't know. We'll have to talk about him another time. I didn't mean to we're just trying to wrap up here, so
because he's like 70 something, so you might be right.
He's like what's that other guy? Crap.
Robert Reich?
Meyer. I can't remember now. The guy with the glasses who's had a pretty good analysis about the Russia-Ukraine war. I feel like it's some kind of Meyer, Higher, whatever. Fuck, I can't remember. Might as well give up on trying to remember now.
It doesn't look like he worked for Goldman Sachs. He's mostly worked at like institutions.
I think he's more like a government economist, advisor.
Yeah.
So that to me that's a traditional bourgeois capitalist economist. And so I don't think he's actually really changed his views about that. He's not really a communist. But as far as what he's been saying a lot lately, he's been saying a lot of anti-imperialist rhetoric, probably social democratic kind of background or paradigm shift. And that's where I say I'm too suspicious to really listen to him too much, even though what he's saying sounds pretty good. So I'm too suspicious. Where maybe I'm paranoid, or maybe
I guess for me, because I've just started listening to him, so all I hear is the new stuff.
Well, it's the old straight white males, academics. Who I always feel like you gotta give them an extra little bit of they have a higher litmus test to a higher bar to prove that they're genuine anti-imperialists, because
do you like Richard Wolff?
Yeah, I appreciate him. He's good. But I'd say Richard Wolff is probably in a different class than someone like Jeffrey Sachs. I think he's more.
He's more left.
He's a Marxist,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Sachs is not.
Jeffrey Sachs is not. Yes.
Big difference. Right. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. So with that being said, I didn't mean to do that, but cool, sweet. That being said, thank you everyone, and we'll see you next Thursday. We had kind of toyed around with doing these more because things are keep moving so fast.
Yeah.
And we have to like not even cover half the stuff that's going on because we only have one day to do it.
Actually, I've been thinking lately, it's been hard for me to get a job because of everything. I don't think restaurants are really hiring very well. So while I don't necessarily think like it's the wisest career decision to try and go all in on the YouTube, on the streaming, that kind of might be the best option for me at the moment, career-wise. If like our audience kind of can support us, then even though it's like most people, it's a risky, not a really safe decision to make. Probably better off just to do the safe thing. But
if you just want to go,
sorry, go ahead.
If you want to go live on an off day, and if I'm around, I'll jump in.
I just think the problem is how much time gets spent on this just for free or whatever. As much as I love to do this,
that's true.
I need to spend my time making money, unfortunately, just like everybody else, because I fucking hate being so broke that I'm depending on everybody to pay my way, right? And right now it's my parents doing the lion's share of that. I appreciate very much anyone who's been able to support me. I suppose now is a good time to call up my Ko-fi thing just in case, because I don't have enough money at all, really. I only have what money my parents have been generous enough to give me to I don't know if that should disqualify me from asking for money for value for value kind of thing. That's one thing you can. How do we describe what we're doing here as far as asking? Or am I just asking for a handout, or am I saying I just provided a whole bunch of information, trying to be as independent, doing some journalism, whatever, amateur journalism, whatever, but it's trying to exchange something in order to, value for value. It's not just, please help me because I suck, right?
I got you. You found your link?
But I never have this. I don't have it called up.
That's okay. So I'll just start playing this because it's 4 minutes long, and you can put up the link when you get it, and we'll put it up.
Yeah, sounds good.
So,
and I'll just say au revoir, everyone. Merci beaucoup.
Everyone, merci beaucoup, and we love you.
And then see you next time.
And see you next time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Is that Netanyahu said in 1996 in a book called Fighting Terrorism. He laid out the whole plan. Usually when there are terrible plans, they don't hide them. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. And I'm not meaning to make simplistic comparisons. I'm just making the point that people say what they're going to do. Netanyahu wrote in 1996 his plan for how he was going to make Israel safe. Brzezinski wrote in 1997 a different book called The Grand Chessboard of how he was going to make the United States the world's unipolar power. So they write the story, and you can go back and evaluate. Did they know what they're talking about? Are they full of BS? Did they cause a lot of trouble? So just on 2 points, Brzezinski in 1997 says the U.S. can expand NATO. Russia will have no choice but to accede. What's Russia going to do? Is it going to become an ally of China? No way, says Brzezinski. Okay, interesting. Didn't quite get that one right, Stig. Netanyahu has a different idea. And it's coherent, but it's kind of madness. His idea is we captured the Palestinian lands in 1967, and we're never going to give them back. So we're just going to rule over the Palestinians. There's a second take which says we're not going to give it back because God in the year 700 BC or in the year 1000 BC, but written in a book, the book of Joshua in the year 700 BC, told us it's ours. And there are people that absolutely believe that as well. Netanyahu spells out very clearly the following story. He says we're going to keep the land. There will be resistance. Hamas, Hezbollah, other militant resistance. What will we do about it? You can't really fight the terrorists, he says. You have to fight the states that back the terrorists.
And Iran is the central one.
But interestingly for Netanyahu, he lays out one by one. Yes, of course, Iran is the central one in his mind, but so too is Iraq under Saddam. He supported Hamas. So too is Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So too is Somalia. So too is Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. He laid it out, and he at various times listed the countries. And one list that showed up in the Pentagon just after 9/11 was 7 countries: Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Libya. And you know what the plan was? 7 wars in 5 years. the U.S. using Israel. No. This is Israel using the U.S. as if our military is in their hands, which in effect it is. You take Wolfowitz and you take Faith and you take these neocons and you take Netanyahu. They game planned the whole thing out. Well, I regard Netanyahu as having been our greatest disastrous president of the 21st century because he ran American foreign policy for 20 years and he cost us trillions of dollars. And where is the Middle East today? War in Syria, war in Lebanon, war in Palestine, unrest in Iraq, war in Yemen, chaos in Sudan, chaos in Somalia, chaos in Libya. Great job, Bibi. You did a terrific job. So this is, to my mind, what this is all about. These people have ideas. How many wars has China been in the last 40 years? Let me count them. That would be 0. Not one war in 40 years. When was the most recent war that China was in? January 16 to February 16, 1979. 1 month in a conflict with Vietnam, which had to do actually with Vietnam having overthrown a government in Cambodia. Okay, 1 month. We are not at dire risk from China. China is not mass murdering its population, but we are gearing up in the United States for war with China. Why? In 2015, they say that China has become so powerful that it threatens American primacy. And China's rise is no longer in America's interest. And so you watch this mentality in the U.S. go into effect. Suddenly, because China's economically successful, they're not just economically successful, they're the enemy. So everything becomes rhetoric. In the case of Ukraine, which I have followed from 1990 as advisor not only to Mikhail Gorbachev and advisor to Yeltsin, but also advisor to President Leonid Kuchma of Ukraine. I was advising the Ukrainian government in 1994. I'm not against Ukraine in any way. I'm against using Ukraine and Ukrainians being slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands because the United States wants to move another piece on the board to have its military bases on the border of Russia. And why, by the way? Because again, there's a whole telltale line of reasoning. Just like the Soviet Union broke up, we can induce Russia to break up along ethnic lines. This is a meme of Washington. These people are out of their minds to be provoking us towards nuclear war this way.
Kentucky police raid.